like to call the meeting of the Plainfield Board of Education to order tonight, March 6, 2019 at 7 o'clock p.m. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Is there a choice? The chair that will not make it.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so
Secretary, there's no secretary.
I'm kind of doing it right now. I'm just waiting
Yep.
for you before I forget. Just give me 1 minute. All right, so tonight we're going over the draft of the fiscal year 2020 budget review. We just wanted to meet to discuss any more of the budget concerns that anyone has and the recommendations going forward. So this is a chance to kind of discuss that this evening. So I will turn it over to Mr. Di Pietro.
All right, you have two documents in front of you. I'm going to ask you to look at the long horizontal document. One of the questions that prompted this meeting was the fact that the governor came out with his budget as a proposed budget, and there's a $600,000 cut in his proposed budget for Plainfield. And it just sparked a concern as to, does the board have to take that under advisement? Yes, and do they have to act on that before they vote on March 13th? I just want to show you a little bit of what the data is here and why it may not be the appropriate time for us as a board and your superintendent and your board of, your finance director, your business manager, to really alter a budget that is under development for the needs of children in our school improvement, given the fact that the governor's budget is only proposed. So if you would look at the second page, and I can't put it all on the screen, plus look at that, I can't read that, but that's okay. Anyways, if you look at the second page, it's the back of the first page. You're going to see I underlined Plainfield. And under the governor's budget, we would go from $15,163,000, which we're getting this year, down to $14,544,000, which is approximately a $600,000 reduction. That's very significant for the town, and we all agree with that, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so go to the next page, turn over, and I'm going to ask you to look at the bottom of the, there's 3 rows that have dots on it. If you look at the third row from the left, I underlined it. Currently this year, if you look at the top, it says fiscal year 2019 estimated, it's $1,865 million is the current budget for education. It's important that we follow along because you're going to see that I'm pretty much want to show you why there's a lack of credibility of what's being proposed, but that's my personal opinion. I just want to see if you agree with me. So there's $1,865 million.
We agree with that.
Okay. The next year, the proposal by the governor is to drop it to $1,843,000, which is a $22 million reduction. And that's coming from the districts, not from the state. The state is reducing their contribution to the districts. So there's the $22 million. That does not include Alliance districts reductions. It includes reductions for all the districts where he felt was appropriate and necessary, but there is not a reduction for the Alliance districts.
What about the dot districts?
Those are things which either do not get any funding, and they're regional. District 1, District 2 are the regional districts. So I don't know if they're under a protected, but you are going to see them come up in the next round. So let me ask you to turn to the back now of the whole document. Just turn it over.
I don't know why they have just new schools in the borough. Where should it say? Yeah, I'm looking at Stonington because Stonington, even though it says borough,
Yep.
it's all one town.
Yes.
So So that's why I said I don't understand why they're under this.
This is just a listing of his budget and where the ECS money went and how he's proposing to change it. I can't analyze that part, but I can show you that if you go to the back of the document and you look at it, let's look at the first three columns. These are the alliance districts, and this is where you begin to understand how the governor proposes to use the money. Under the first column, you'll see that the alliance districts, which are listed in that first column, going on the other pages, $151 million is given to the alliance districts. Next year, he wants to build that up to $190 million. That's a $39 million increase. And you can read which each district that's an alliance gets. Like Killingly just stays flat, Putnam stays flat. But if you look at Hartford, $4 million. If you look at Waterbury, $7 million. If you look at New Britain, $4 million. So of the $39 million, there's money given out, and you can see some of the larger districts. Again, you can clearly see he's making an effort to help districts that are larger urban districts, that are alliance districts, and they're failing to meet targets. Here's the important point that I just need you to understand, which is why we're going to go to our budget and hopefully do our budget and wait to see how this works out. When you look at the two underlined rows, which are what says education cost sharing total, so it's 4 lines in at the bottom, you'll see that currently this year, $2 billion, $2,016 million is what it's in the, yep, you're on the right one. Right above where it says net increase, you'll see an underline. Under the 2019, they're currently spending $2,016 million. The next year, he wants that to jump to $2,034 million, which is $17 more million. About 18, it's 17.6.
So where's that going?
Where does that money come from? $22 million was subtracted from the Plainfields and all the non-alliance, and he's adding $18 million of state money to that. So he's putting $39 million, he says that there's a financial crisis, right? But he's putting $39 million into the alliance districts, taking $22 million from existing districts which are struggling just to meet our needs, giving them $22 million from the non-alliance districts and adding $18 million. So the petition that we're doing as a collective group is to say, if there's a financial crisis, everybody should be held harmless. Don't take $22 million away from districts struggling to survive to give to districts. If you have $17 million and you want to give that to them, we get that. That might be your choice. But don't take $22 million from those districts that are already challenged and give that money to the alliance districts and then give them $18 more million. If you got $18 million that you say you have a financial crisis, you want to give it to them, so be it. But it doesn't make sense that you would reduce an already reduced ECS. We're $180,000 down from 2 years ago. He wants to cut $600,000 more, and in the second year cut $400,000 for $1,180,000. I don't know what you feel about it. To me, it's upsetting. It's unconscionable that you would take money from districts that are surviving and doing well with what they're doing, giving that money because other districts are having trouble. If you need money, give them money, but don't take it from the people who are basically getting from the taxpayers and the little bit of state money to basically make ends meet. I just don't think it's time to make a judgment on our budget based on a budget that doesn't really show that it's, if there's a financial crisis in the state, you would not add $39 million.
No.
I mean, if there's a reduction, there's a reduction. If there isn't, we should be held harmless.
I hate to be a cynic,
Okay.
but we're working so hard to get our scores up.
Yeah.
Why bother?
And exactly, I mean, it's a kick in the face.
And you know, how long have they been in
Yeah.
alliances? You know, how
Some 3 to 5 years.
and they haven't turned it around yet, have they?
Some have. We have
Okay, so
two
those
or
are
three
different.
districts that are actually out of the alliance, like Putnam, but they're still getting
Yeah.
the protection, just because they don't want to diminish the support they got them out of the alliance. So they're still being protected, although they're not alliance.
How many alliance districts?
47,
Double standard.
Yeah, it's a lot.
122.
And we do good with less, we still want.
122
And
are
they
good
come
enough
to
money.
us and ask us, how do we do it?
banding together?
Of
We're
course.
not telling them
So do we
anymore.
have like a lobbyist who's like
That's
saying, hey, we're 122 versus the 46, like
Come
what
and
are we
use our
doing?
reading books.
I can only,
Yeah, that's
I
what
can
they-
only make this so critical. My only point is, I just wanted to show you the numbers. If there was a financial crisis and everybody was taking a hit, I would say, you know what, we're all gonna do this together. Like when the governor last time said, I have the fiscal right because of a crisis to cut everybody's ECS, and he did that under a law that said that he could if there was a crisis. If there's a crisis, you're not adding $39 million. That's
No.
Right.
Now, that being said, I want to show you that what we took under account for what you talked to us at the last meeting, the purpose of tonight is not to vote, but just for you to understand what we as administrators did based on some of the language we heard. And the way to do that is, now you're going to go to the horizontal one. When dark covers, it looks like that. This wording, but I'll be able to point to the section. So we hear it this one, okay? And I got two pieces of information. I have on the left side before the line, I have the last budget that you had. You had that budget at the February meeting, and you remember on the left side, right here, it said that we would be asking for $673,000 as our request to the town based on these increases. So you can see that's what you approved in February.
Wasn't that number contingent on the town meeting with the special ed funds?
Correct. That included, yep, that's on the next page bottom, and I can show you that. Hold on, that's a good question. Let me show it to you so that we can be on the same page. Here we go, watch. If you look at the next page, you can see in red, or in your case, it might still be black. There was $300,000 taken from the special ed excess, right? And that's what reduced our special ed costs. So that's where we were in February. I'm going to go back to the top, because I want to do one more thing before I show you what we did and what we didn't do. And you should say, good job. Good job is this. If you look at the schools, it says ECC. If you look from the left to the right column, you won't see a difference. ECC had 237, it will get 237. We did not touch any school or their needs in order to achieve the goals they have. Shepherd Elementary, $2,543,000, $2,543,000. Moosup, $2,173,000, $2,173,000. Memorial, $2,386,000, $2,386,000. Plainfield Central, $4,057,000. Plainfield High School, $6,377,000. You are going to see that there is a reduction in special ed. I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. The first rule that we started with is you asked not to hurt the students, not to hurt the schools. We knew there's no money to touch there. So what we did is we went back and said, what else can we do? So we also had a meeting with the first selectman. Along the way, we've had these discussions, and you know that we went to the first selectman, all the Board of Selectmen, they also went to the Board of Finance, and we told them about the use of special education excess costs. And we explained to them that when you use that money, it does not add to the MBR, it doesn't change the appropriation to the school, it's an offset to the cost. We were asking for $300,000. The selectman just said, I'm beginning to understand how that works. It's not an added cost, it's an offset cost, and then the end result is you don't have that next year as a going forward. You still have the base of what we appropriated. So the first thing we did is we went to the special ed line, which if you look on the left side of the bar, you see it was $6,648,000 for an increase of $148,000, right? Are we good there? If you look what we did, we took $148,000 out of that. Why didn't we take more with the special ed access? Because there's another regulation that says you cannot diminish the support to special ed. You can't give them less money. It'd be nice if they said you can't give the schools less money, but at least the special ed kids are protected. So we can't take $200,000 out of the line. It would look like, even though it's not, because we're spending it as a cost offset, it would appear as a reduction to support children. And then we'd have to justify it and defend it. It creates havoc. So what we did here is we took $148,000, and when you do that, look, the appropriation to the schools wouldn't be $673, it would be 495. I don't know how much more magic they would expect. That's a good number at least to go to the public with, as opposed to $750,000 to go less than $500,000. So we did that because strategically, it's using the state's money as an offset instead of the tax dollars. What happens in this case is the taxpayers give us $673,000, God willing, and then if we don't need all that money, they already paid the taxes, and the excess would go into the fund balance. But that's not the reason why people pay taxes, is to put it in the fund balance. They want to pay their taxes to support what's needed. This represents a taxpayer investment that is offset by the state's contribution. So that's what we did. To lower that number first, the most significantly, we did that.
Good job, Ken.
So that's just to let you know where that money came from. The second thing we did is we looked and we went through, these numbers all pretty much remain the same, but you know that we had to increase the number of projected retirees and resignations because we had originally 5, we're up to 8. I have 6 of record, I'm waiting for 2 more. But if 8 people leave, there is coverage for their vacation time payouts, so you can't just increase the people leaving without increasing the benefits they get from their severance. So we increased that by about $7,000. But think about it, 3 more people at $25,000 is a $75,000 savings. Part of that has to come back in a benefit cost, which we increased. So we protected it there.
That's 6 people.
This number is the same, 24 to 16,000, and you see a little bit, which actually is a significant difference in fixed charges. So let me tell you the good news about the fixed charges and where we applied that. The fixed charges are, Mr. Lucia and I, and mostly to Mr. Lucia's credit, we have been watching, monitoring, and working with our workers' comp to reduce. You know, 2 years ago we got celebrated as the district that had the best reduction in worker comp injuries. So our rate now has reduced, as well as, not only does it reduce for us, but that reduces the ratio between the town. So where were we before, 60-40?
Yeah, something like that.
It was 60-40. We reduced our liability costs, so, like you were trying, so where is it now?
About 50.
50, 50, 55, something like that.
Yeah.
So there's a reduction both in the share as well as our cost. So across the workers' comp and liability, there's about $60,000, $50,000 to $60,000 that we save. Not quite, but in that realm. So when that happens, we want to show good faith to the town and let them know that if we saved money because of the way we've done that, that should be applied in good ways. And the ways we did it is, number one, we took it out as a cost savings here. So the 192 went down to 155. Certainly a bigger savings of close to $30,000, almost a little more than that. And we applied some of those funds in a few different ways. One, we applied some monies to the fact that we know that you have not had the CAVE support, and you said part of that is to expend about $13,000, and in a time when we were getting cut $750,000. So we only reinvested half of that, and we're going to use grants for the other half, so that basically the cost is now about $6,500. The reason that's important is we have not been inextricably linked to the CAVE lobbying. Some of the things we're talking about now, we don't get the information. We were not all invited to some of the workshops that they're offering, which are helping and representing us, even with the state. I think it's in your best interest. We did that because we didn't know where you might want to go, but we knew that you would not invest 100% of that money. You were looking to create some savings. The other thing we invested is about, we have in here in the total picture, about $10,000, because if we don't address our truancy, the rating that we're getting in the state is not affected by our content instruction. It's affected by, we have an absentee rate at the high school and at Shepherd Hill, which is in excess of the 13-15% margin at the high school, because it is in the 21% that they rate us at. The point value, which should be 100% of the points if you're less than 5%, so Moosup has a 4.4% absentee rate, they get 100% of the points on scoring, because it's not just about teaching, it's having the kids there to be taught. I mean, that's one of the factors. As is health and PE, as is career readiness training, as is science, which is not sciences, but Growth is now being assessed. So there's factors. We put in money so that we either can get truancy support through East Con or look to our police, whatever we need to do to re-engage the public, understanding absence cannot be tolerated. Not because it's a score point, because obviously if you have 10% out of your schools in certain schools, they're not attending. Yes, we're not teaching them well. Half of the reason is because we need them in school. We know we need to do something directly related to improving the attendance, you know, in certain schools. So we brought in the pieces that we felt, if we don't start addressing some of the critical areas where we need improvement without adding to the burden of the taxpayers. So what you notice, and I told you, schools were not touched. We reduced special ed by 148, but that money is going to come from special ed excess. I'll show you that on the next sheet. We reduced the money that we saved because of good stewardship of workers' comp and liability, although we did have a fire. That is a liability cost. Somewhere that's going to go up again, but this year's a good one. You know, you can't usually get rated up till the year before, because they do usually 3 or 5 year averaging. So it's going to hit you. We're going to get it. But this is not the year that we're getting hit. So we're doing okay with that. And we thought about 2 critical areas. One where there's more people leaving and we have to address a deficit that would be a structural deficit. And we need to do something about, because we weren't given a directive that, you know, let's go change the world. We were told we need to continue progress by the board. So predicting, tonight is about knowing what we did do, and if there are other things I have to clean up, or Ron and I have to address that someone says, what about? We want to be ready for the 13th. You don't get a reprieve past the 13th. That's your voting day. That's when you have to say, this is our proposal. And remember, it's stage 1. It goes to the Board of Selectmen. It then goes to the Board of Finance. It then goes to the public. So 3 more stages. And then I'll open the floor, but let me just show you what it looks like now on the revenue side. And actually, it's really not so bad. So where we were originally asking for about $695,000 that we would need to have from the town, and our increase was going to be about $650,000. On the second page in, if you look at the sheet, you'll see the $300,000 that was coming out of special ed excess. We upped to 448.
I don't see it.
Okay, here, it's hard because I'm showing you. Yeah, you got
there
it.
it
Oh,
is.
got it,
Also,
right?
now I got
Good,
it.
good, good.
Okay, now I got it.
There's a small enough group that I'd rather make sure that everybody sees it. This is what we did in February. Then we talked to the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen, and I think they at least understand the purpose of the special ed excess. We then applied it over here, and basically that reduced the special ed cost to flat. That answers some of the questions that people say, why is it that you always raise the cost of special ed, but some of our regular ed kids are not? It's just not true at this point. If we do this model, virtually the state is helping the excess cost, and we're retaining all the work for all the children, inclusive of special ed students. So it's actually adding $400,000 to special education, but it's adding it through the state revenue rather than through the taxpayer revenue. So there's that change right there. You'll see that we only have inside for the state contribution is $15,346,000. When you look to the left, you see state aid block grant, ECS. And you see it says $15,349,000. The problem that we have is that's the number that we believe should be reinstated. We don't know. The governor may give us $15,163,000. The governor may give us $600,000 less. We don't know. All we know is I showed you at least the credibility that if there's $22 million that is not taken from the districts and there's another $18 million to be shared, I think the question that we're asking as a lobby is to say, you need to reinstate everybody back to ECS, and then any new money should go to the people who need it, students, children, and alliance districts. Whether that happens, we didn't jump all the way back to $15 million or $15 million 5. We kept it in at the $15 million 3. We definitely took more money out of special ed excess, so that at the bottom it will say that the money being requested of for the budget of the school department is now less than $500,000, and we did do that strategically. We worked to make that number come under $500,000, because that's the money that you have to virtually sell to the public, the appropriation. And hopefully there are sufficient revenues. We saw in the paper, the town expects $350,000 more in terms of revenue. We left, just remember, just so you look at this number here, that special ed excess, we left how much money in the special ed excess still for the town? Now I'll know if you can understand that page. How much money did we leave inside special ed excess if we're only using 448?
275?
Yes. Yes. So we're not taking the entire amount. So you didn't know you're going to be quizzed today. Again, I don't want people to think, not those people who follow the video, not people who attend, I don't want everybody to think that we're saying, just give us all the money, because we don't know what will happen next year. There could be some increases. We might have decreases. The nice thing about special ed excess is what isn't used goes to the town. What is used takes care of that excess cost. It's really a nice piece of legislation. We just haven't had to access it in the past. But they also didn't take $750,000 away from us in the past. So we had a different relationship when we weren't being under pretty much attack with the state. Yes, Mr. Carter.
So, has the town approved giving us the 448?
No, this is next year's budget. We're asking in the town this year to give us $350 for the crisis we have. All right? If they say yes to that, which I hope they will, because the law says if we have the excess, we have to give it.
I get that.
Right. So if they give us $350, right? Doesn't it make sense that if they're paying $350,000 of money not in the budget, that means next year our budget has to go up anyways because those kids are here. It's a structural deficit. So this number has to go up by $350 next year because the kids are already in our buildings. Well, they're not in our buildings. They're in tuition buildings. They're outside. So asking for $448 is the new request for next year. This year we're asking for $350, and if they approve that, I have to hope this will make sense to them.
So when do we ask them for the 448?
That's only when you approve budget, and that's not till March 13th. Until you tell me this is a go, they have not seen that number. All right? This is for the next year, we're asking $448. This year, we said we're in the middle of a crisis. We need the $350. The law says it comes to us within 30 days.
When will we?
March 20th is the Board of Finance meeting. They do have a special meeting called for March 28th. I don't know if that is part of that condition. I don't know. They have 30 days from February 28th, which is when the funds came in. And nothing happens until the Board of Selectmen act first. I believe there's a Board of Selectmen meeting on the 11th of March before our meeting. And we will report that out if they vote to endorse this. If they do, then the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education would be jointly asking the Board of Finance to grant us the $350,000 offset. Not new money, doesn't come to the school, they just pay $350,000 worth of tuition costs.
It comes in multiple installments during the school year, because it's just designated for that school year's excess cost. So there's the December 1st filing that we have to do, and then a March 1st filing that we have to do, and then it comes...
That's it. We get it in May.
But then it comes a couple of weeks
Right. We get it in
after those filings.
So there's 450 that we're going to be asking for next year. We haven't received it, we haven't heard.
Correct.
We're rejecting that we're going to get it.
Correct. And in this, Mr. Carney, you can see that we're expecting 723. We've gotten 700,000. The lowest we've ever gotten is 475, 495. The most we ever got was 923, 940,000.
No million?
So based on our projections right now, we already have from the state, you're getting 708,000 guaranteed. And we already know that this year. And it's probably going to go higher. Because we have more kids since we filed in December. So what did we learn? We took your budget from February 13th. We reassigned more of the excess to lower the special ed costs, to lower the tax burden, and to lower the appropriation, to keep our ECS funding flat, to not change that until the state decides what to do with the governor's budget. We took some money out of the workers' comp liability because we have done a better job with protecting liability. We're returning that to the taxpayers and the town as not asking for that money. We applied some of it to two issues that we know. Excess people being retired or resigning will have some excess severance pay benefits. And about $10,000 is in there for the fact that we have to do something with support for attendance. I have some other strategies that I think we can do, but those are going to be structurally designed. We just need to make sure there's enough money to achieve this. Questions have been asked, such as, what about the new fund that we have at the high school? You know, we charge $50 rather than $35, and that is growing, but if you realize, the seniors couldn't be added money because they were already under a 3-year commitment. The juniors, they only have 1 year, so they're not getting any benefit, so we had to leave those lots. But the freshman and the sophomore both went to $50, but that's a $15 difference for 200 children in 2 grades. It might be $3,000, $4,000, but it's not $40,000 yet. In the course of 2 years, 9, 10, 11, and 12, 600 children every year, adding $15 a piece, will start making that number become much more productive, such as, you know, 6 to 8 to 10,000 more. It's not there because it's the first year. So we couldn't take that as a cost offset. It's not designed to do that, but we're trying to just help the rising cost of programs be somewhat offset by parents with children attending these programs and not the grandparents at home who have a fixed income and a property tax, making the property tax go up for people who have no children. This is a way of being just fair to those people who are taking programs. And you know that we never charge a child who doesn't have the funds to do that. Everything's on a sliding scale.
Are there any further questions regarding the budget of what's in or what's not? Because this is kind of our last really discussion point for the budget. I'm happy we're addressing the chronic absenteeism and putting some funding towards that. Just because when you really look at our scores, they are really impressive, but it's definitely holding us back for that chronic absentee point.
I think that we shouldn't go in with a bare bones budget, because no matter what we give, we're going to get cut. So, yes, I'm being cynical again.
I do have to hope, I have to tell you honestly that, Ms. Berry, last year, when we had a $750,000, we made those cuts. And I think that was worse than bare bones. We lost behavior management specialists, we didn't do our CNA, you know that we lost ground. At the end of that year, as luck would have it, the town raised so much extra revenue because it was one of those reevaluation years. They actually put $500,000 in the reserves. So we took reductions. Literally, over 200 people, including myself and Ron and many of us, just took furlough days. We just took money out of our pocket and said, we're going to try to help the district. I thought that was a really nice professional response on the part of the membership. Do you know how they feel right now when they gave up $20,000 and the town put $500,000 back into the reserve? That money did not go to get us another behavior management. It didn't get us CNA. That money was to get us to the end of the year, and we made it to zero. I think right now, even though we're coming in with a budget like this, the town already knows that their tax rate, as it is, should bring in $350,000 more. That's what they wrote in the paper, and I think that makes sense because they put $500,000 away last year. If that rises because of new construction, that could be more than that. I don't know what the net impact is on the public, but if we're coming in anywhere 400,000, 500,000, or 600,000, and the town needs 300,000 or 400,000, and it's $1 million, but they actually generate more than $500,000 in revenue without taxes increase, and because it's split now, the town's vote is separate from the schools. So the people could say, we'll give the town the money and not the school. I have to hope to God that they don't do that, but I don't know. We're in a new world. We got the state changing the rules. We're finally getting to use special ed excess aid. We're trying to come in with a lower budget, and like you said, don't go so bare bones because you take another cut. What are you cutting from? It's 8 retirements. If we get 7, that's $30,000 that we eat. But I do believe that two more are coming up because you know, people do talk to me, but I don't have them in my, you know, I don't have them as votes for you yet.
How many
Would
have
this-
we approved?
I'm sorry?
How many have we approved?
You've approved, I think, 5, and there's a 6th one we know of that's waiting until the right time for them to announce. So we have 6 we know of. Two more, at least, I believe, we'll do it. We actually had one person that was a resignation, not a retirement. He just left as an English teacher. And, you know, if he's at 9th step, if he's up there 8th or 9th, that's about 60,000. His replacement will be 40, so that's a $20,000 savings. So that is money. It's not 30, but it's good money.
If we get this increase approved by the Board of Finance
Yes, for this year.
this year,
Yeah.
is it still up for the referendum?
No, because it's not an increase in the appropriation. The town never gives us the money, they just pay the bills with tuition.
All right, so even though,
Perfect. The town doesn't have a problem, there's no tax revenue issue, they just pay. It's like we get money for E-rate, $40,000. We just don't budget for it. We know we're getting the money, we pay the bill. Same thing. We get money from Sterling.
All right, any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess I just have a little bit of doubt, as always, about using the 15.3 number, the baseline this often. I mean, we have a number in the governor's proposal.
Yep.
The governor has clear majorities in Hartford, especially from I think, a lot of support in the districts that are getting their bump in their ECS money, whether they're alliance or not. I think the responsible thing here would be to be working with that proposal number until there is another credible number to be pulled out of Hartford. I think he did great work piecing together the number that we think would be fair. But as we've seen, it doesn't matter what we think is fair. It matters what the majority in Hartford is going to be saying. And I think when we use that 15.1 number, it does change the proposal that we'll be putting forward. That's the path I think we should be taking and where we should have started from.
I agree. So let me just show you 2 things that I think we did to accommodate that. One, you'll notice that we brought it down to 500,000 from 673. We actually did take down 163,000, which is almost the same number that will drop us to where the governor's is. So we really are trying to keep that number, which is we thought this was fair, and the excess. That's 1. 2, there's 275,000 up here that the town would receive as a part of it. And the third part of it is the regulation that the board has. I understand your point is more than the regulation, but the regulation of the board is only to ask for the appropriation. The revenue side is the town side. If they don't believe the 163 added is going to come to them, they may say to us, I think you have to reduce that. I think that the revenue side is not the board's responsibility to project the worst and say, I think our goal is to build this, understanding that when we go forward, that number could go down or could go up, and that may then make them give us a decision that we have to cut somewhere. I don't think we can cut it before it happens, because once you cut 150,000, even if the money comes in, you can't have it. If you cut this money to try to account for the 15 million one, what will happen is even if the money comes in, it just won't be given. It'll just be money revenue to the town. I think that's just my opinion. The safest way is to write, and you said that that's a pretty good justified number here. But there is a question where our budget is built on the projection that we are going to get at least level funded.
If the rest of the town is working with whatever numbers have already been put out there, I think that's what they would come back to us and say. Anyway, but that's a matter of opinion. I guess my second question is just about the excess funds placement. I mean, that number moves down from 723 down to the 423, and then further reduced on the state revenue side down to 275 or what we're anticipating.
Correct.
So I'm just curious, you know, what keeps you from moving down to 250 or 200 if this is all just going to be funds that the town is handling anyway, and then dispersing to us as we incur the cost? Why not? Why can't that number be much lower if we're spending it and getting reimbursed anyway?
Because the only thing you can spend it on is special ed, and it must be excess. If this brings us back down to 0 in special ed, you can't justify why you need another 275,000 because there's no number here to put it against. It doesn't pay for prior costs; it pays for excess costs.
Okay, so what's our baseline then?
Our baseline is
just the previous year spend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Good I mean, I answer loud because I want to make sure he hears me, but they are good questions.
Then where, I'm just curious, then where would I find the 275 reference baseline?
So here's 723, right? Minus the, hold on. Here's 723, 423, and that's because the 423.80 up here, $300,000 of this was 448, and then we used 300,000 to bring that to 148. Here's the 148, we brought it down to 540,000. So the 423, we went reduced by 148,000. These two numbers still add up to say, there's 300 and then there's another 140 subtract.
Okay, gotcha.
Good.
Thank you.
I need analytical people because they think hard.
Okay.
And I'm a mathematician.
So, are there any further questions? Alright, so then I think we're pretty much set for next week then.
People can still cut. If you see something and you call and we can make a cut, we will make it. I just know that I can't cut on the 13th or the 13th. Give me a heads up. If you saw something and said, you don't even sleep, there's 20,000, please give the calls. We go through this, but you can't see everything when you're working on it this closely. And if we get any other news, we will email you, because that's not a protocol of public meeting. That's just informing you, the state just said they're giving us 200,000 more. You need to know that, because you can't act next week without that knowledge if they do make a change.
Can I just highlight one point?
Sure. Chair.
Is that okay? Ken briefly mentioned this point around within special ed, because a lot of the conversation has been around special ed. Ken mentioned this point about there's additional guidelines from the federal government around maintaining costs. I just wanted to highlight, that's something that comes up every year when we do the IDA grant. We have to submit something called a maintenance of effort, very similar to the MBR for the state. So we have to show that we're equally contributing every year and not reducing costs and using federal dollars to then supplement those costs there. So that is something that we're always keeping in mind, and that's why when Ken's talking about these numbers, we have to kind of maintain that baseline going forward. And so the maintenance of effort is an underlying thing that's here, that's always in the back of the conversation. The state, in the past 2 or 3 years, has come down a lot harder on the maintenance of effort and really making that a strong requirement. And they actually, this past year, asked districts that did not maintain effort to return federal money. Which is the first time that happened. And so that's why that's such an important thing and an underlying thing part of the special ed budgeting as well.
The example of that in reality was 4 years ago, we started the EastCon program on the 2nd floor, and so we were given $20,000 discount for 10 children. So we had $60,000 outplacements for 10 children, that's $600,000, and we got $20,000 back on 10, so we saved $200,000, right? So that year, we flatlined our special ed costs, and in the course of the year, we had to write an explanation because they came to us and said, we're going to cut you an equivalent of what you failed to meet because you dropped your cost by $200,000. We went back and said, no. 10 kids were out, they were $600,000. 10 kids are still out, they're just in our building. We're paying the electricity, we're paying the heat, we're paying the custodian, but EastCon reduced our cost, and so they said, okay, now we see you have maintenance of that. Guess what happened? Because we cut $200,000, those $60,000 placements now were no longer recoverable into special ed excess. That was the year we went down to $495. So the next year, we told EastCon, we don't want $20,000 per kid. We would just like 3 of the least cost students to be given free. So 3 of our $50,000 students were given to us at no cost, because the higher cost kids then were recovered by state aid. You almost got to work against the state to work with the state, because here we were saving the town money and the state money, and they were going to give us less state aid. So we were hurting the taxpayers. So we virtually had to get $200,000 in cost reductions by child rather than across children, so that the $70,000 placements were still 70 and we recovered.
So then, does that same amount of monitoring and analysis go into the use of the excess funds?
Yes.
So then the state would know that if we're not using up a certain portion of it, we've put it in our fund balance out of the fact?
Yes, if it's called in for the purpose and you have to qualify, they can say, where was the cost? Where was it done on the side of the town? If you don't have excess costs, then you're not qualified to have to use that. So when we have a notice like we did, we had 550,000. If we call it in, they would say, show that the town paid 350,000, and that would be a ledger request.
Because I know you mentioned before how through this program we managed to return unused funds into the fund balance.
That's absolutely correct.
Maybe that solves why we're getting big in ECS.
What's
What's the delta on that as far as total dollars sent over here that just end up in our fund balance?
I think the biggest hit that the governor originally used in ECS was that the fund balance is so strong, it's stronger than other districts. So he discredited our efforts to save money. And he virtually made that statement. You can look at the districts where they have a good fund balance. The other one is when you don't use the ECS funding, they eventually, and this is what Scott brought to the table, they eventually could say districts don't need it. So why are you giving the money if they're really not applying it? If you're not using that money specifically for the purpose of special ed costs, we just won't do it. And that happened on transportation. We can show you the year. It was 458,000. They cut all 458,000. Guess where they, just take a guess where they put the $458,000 they cut us 5 years ago. Guess. No, really, be nice. No, where did they put that money, the $458,000 from transportation that they cut on our side of the ledger of our grant, and they put it in the special ed. They gave us our special ed aid, which was offset by $458,000 from our transportation. So we lost the $458,000. We got the full special ed, but we no longer have special ed, no longer have transportation. They just took their grant to us and put it inside another grant, and they took one away. They'll do the same thing with special ed. If you don't, they'll just say, oh, we need that for ECS. Didn't the governor say he was going to do that? He said he was going to take the excess aid and fold it right into your allocation. But oh, by the way, Plainfield doesn't need all that money. So we're going to reduce that, but you're not going to get special ed excess, and that's what they're for. So that is exactly twice. What was once it was done and once it was fought.
It's part of the conversation about excess costs is one of the reasons why we brought it up, because Malloy first started it in his first go around in the last budget.
Eliminated.
He eliminated it and put it in the excess. And so that's when it first stirred people. There's also another legislative proposal that's out there to look at special ed funding as like a state co-op. And when they look at that, they're going to look at funding formulas and audits. And one of the things they're going to look at is how have you been using your excess costs as a town? And if towns are not using it, the state's going to say, well, did you really need it? And so when we adjust to a new formula, they might factor that in. And so the law is established for this purpose. It's established to protect towns and MBRs. It's established to protect general ed students. So you're not taking away from students that are established, that are general ed students, to provide for your high-cost students. And it's to protect the high-cost students that need high-cost care that come into your district. So it's most states do not have something like this. So it's there to cover multiple areas from the town to each level of student in that town.
But if in a year they decide to go, the funds follow the child, so if a student comes from Killingly, like we had one from Killingly or Putnam, and they come in, we absorb that cost and special ed excess covers that. But if they now say that after September 1st, the money follows the child, then Putnam will pay for that child for that year. You don't have an excess cost. They budgeted, they're going to do it. We then would not get excess costs because they're going to pay for it. The good thing is their budget is solvent and they don't have excess expenditures, but they also don't have excess savings. So you know as a town, if I plan for $4 million, you're going to spend $4 million. Even if 3 kids leave, we're going to spend that money. But then excess costs could be compromised. We're in a very difficult time because of difficult finances. All the questions are well raised.
What happens if we have a child who's outplaced, who returns, say May 1st?
Yeah.
We budgeted, say $10,000 a month
Yep.
for that child who now comes in and goes into, a Plainfield spot. The child is still special ed, right? And do we get hit because we're spending less money on this child?
Yes. So we have at least 3 or 4 students who have started as of February. They won't make 80,000. So we won't get any recovery this year. Next year, there'll be 108,000. Then we'll get recovery. That's good that we don't have it, except that that's all cost, no recovery. The nice thing is that the excess aid doesn't say that you had to meet the threshold. Excess aid pays for anything more than you projected. So if we had $40,000, that's why we put in the petition this year. We have 12 kids. They're not all going to make the threshold, but those that we didn't project them, we didn't know about them, so those costs are protected by the excess. Next year, you should budget for those costs. So the excess aid is a cost offset. Next year, it's a structural deficit. The way you handle that is you make the excess aid become part of that funding source, and it's never a structural deficit. The money's there. The taxpayer doesn't pay it. The state pays it. But we'll see how that works, because this year is our first, effort. We've always tried to manage. Every year, we already know everything's tight. We always tried to make it work. And as you know, last month you reduced costs by $200,000 just in line transfers. Remember, we made $200,000 reductions. We can't do $500,000. We did the best we could, so the rest is the $350,000 that we've asked for. But you actually did that. And every year we make adjustments to cover excess costs. Not always special ed. Could be anything. Could be a roof repair,
Or a building permit.
or
Have we had any more outplacements since we got that list?
Since we started the budget conversation, potentially one more. There's one that's in the works. But we've recovered a couple that were on that list, that we've corrected some errors from DCF that were made, and we originally weren't accounting for them, and we realized that there was an error in how they programmed that service to us. So it's held steady here for the past couple of weeks, because when I first came, it was pretty volatile in those first couple of weeks.
The strongest hit is till about January, because people are moving in and out, migrating. In the winter, the only thing that happens is due to poverty, people cannot afford to pay the heating or their rent, so they just move from Putnam to Killenly to Plainfield to Sterling back. That's called a migration pattern. Where is the housing affordable? It's in the 4 communities that we have. So when they tell you get out, you're evicted because you haven't paid your bill, your heating bill, they just move to the nearest community. It's called a migration of poverty. In Rhode Island, it was Coventry and Pawtucket. I mean, not Coventry, it was Central Falls and Pawtucket. They'd see them in September, they'd be in Pawtucket. In December, they'd be in Central Falls, and by February, they're back in Pawtucket, and they say, where were you last? Where'd you come from? I don't remember, I thought I was here. They were here. The same child actually comes back to the same community based on spring. It's pretty sad, and it's good that the state has some kind of recovery for these things. There's an awful lot of things that we have to deal with as a school system, because we need to. They're our kids. They're just our kids.
All right. So there's no further questions. The status of the LED conversion project, we're going to dispense with that because it's not ready to be discussed at this point.
So we're going to table?
So yeah, we're going to table that.
No.
Because there's no decisions, it was just a status update. But I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We're adjourned.
Kathleen?